And, like in that prayer, in that moment, I was like, look, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. But like, for the love of God, please don't let my kids find me.
Welcome back to another episode of Tales from the Grips. I'm your host, Brian, and today I have another very special guest on me, a good friend, somebody who I've actually known for like
a fucking long time.
a long ass time.
Yep.
So got you here to tell your story, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I'm excited, man. This is cool. I'm glad that you're doing this. It's cool. I've watched a couple of the episodes. And, I think it's just cool to see people doing something new, doing something that they like to do. But it's been inspiring too, man. Like,
thank you.
Yeah, dude. We'll listen to different people and stuff. It's a cool format. Podcasting is a cool format to like really get to know people, but also like relate. And it's kind of like I'm a big podcast nerd too. So like.
Yeah.
Like a long talking format, like you really get to know people and it's cool,
Yeah, and that was the whole thing. I love podcasts for one.
Yeah.
And two, I've never been like creative. I'm not like you. I'm not like a good singer.
Right.
I could play instruments and shit. I've been athletic, but I couldn't do any of the other shit.
Yeah.
But this is a way that I can find like creativity and something that I want to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
And It's been, and that on top of that, I love like listening to people's stories, and talking about recovery and stuff like that. So it's just a perfect mixture for me.
Yeah.
And you do like, we've all heard speaker tapes,
right?
And a speaker tape is a person speaking without interjection.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little different,
The
and especially like the people that are like speakers, like it's, a lot of it's very good, but some of it is, you can tell it's just so rehearsed in some ways. Like not everybody, but some of them, it's like they have said the same thing the same way for like 10 years.
A bazillion times.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
They got the right jokes in the right spot. Like they're, it's like a comedy set almost with some of them.
It's almost like me when I share.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There
you taking
go.
a shot. Pew.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you mention like it being more personable, like you really get to know somebody when you're doing a podcast,
and it's more intimate, like if you're sharing like in a meeting or something and sharing your story, you're like in front of a bunch of people. I feel like the energy is almost a little bit different. It seems more intimate, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Yeah. For me, honestly, doing this is it's a little more.
It's probably beneficial for your recovery and your stuff too. It's
probably.
Yeah.
It's a little more. I'm so like telling jokes and stuff. I do really good at like on stage in front of people.
Yeah.
But like this form is a little bit different. So, but yeah, man, it is a pleasure to have you, and thank you. You were kind of like, yeah, I'm down, man. Hit me up. So I really appreciate you coming on, man. And like I said, I've known you, man, your whole ride,
dude,
in recovery.
I think since I was 19. I'm about to be 33, dog. Getting old.
We are getting old.
Yep. Yeah. Kids and marriage and also divorces. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just living life.
Fingers crossed. I don't have to.
Yeah. Knock on wood, bro.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
But what I don't know is like a lot of your childhood and stuff like that. So you want to tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, man. So I ended up in Jacksonville because I went to rehab. So in 2009, but I'm from Maryland. So and my parents, my mom, both of them had me at a really young age. And
like how young?
Probably 20 years old, 19, 20 years old. And just a couple of kids trying to raise a kid. But they got like some of my earliest memories, like there's a couple of memories that I have of them being together, but they got divorced really young. Like one of my first memories is like, and it was toxic, man. Like one of my first memories is like my dad coming over, I guess like, they just got divorced or whatever, and he wanted to see me, and he was outside the door, like banging on the door, you know, like, let me see my kid. And I was probably like 2 or 3, but I remember him just like crying outside the window. Just it's sad, but that's like my earliest memories. It's probably why I'm fucked up, you know. But yeah, and then, you know, my mom, great parents. They're great people. They both have great hearts. We have great relationships today, but it's been a long road. You know, they both had to do work on themselves. I had to do work on myself. You know, like when I first got into recovery, you know, I wanted to stay in Florida because I was just so pissed off. Like I kind of had some anger and resentment and almost blamed them for the way that I was. But the longer that I stayed clean and learned about this disease, and the more mistakes that I made as a father or just as, you know, as an adult, I was like, oh, you know, like because my dad's an addict for sure.
Yeah.
Has the disease. And, you know, just helped me have some empathy and some understanding. And, but yeah, so my mom.
I will say, I completely, I don't want to like, you know, interject too much on your story, but I completely understand that because I have this same exact experience with like my parents dying early when I was 11 years old. When my dad died, my mom was already gone. I hated my father as an adolescent going through school and stuff because other kids would come to school and they'd be like, oh, look what my parents got me around Christmas time. And I'd be like, man, fuck your parents. You know, like
I was playing baseball with my dad.
Like, your dad's an asshole.
Fuck off.
Yeah, exactly. So I completely get that. But once you come in and you start doing that work, you do get the understanding of like, oh, they're people, they're the same disease.
Nobody's perfect, man. You know, and then this disease too, like, because it's like a threefold disease and it affects you spiritually, mentally, and physically. Like, you know, especially when you don't understand that you have the disease. You know, I understand, you know, when people talk about like, I remember when I first started coming to meetings, they'd be like, you know, my disease talks to me in my own voice. I'm like, you guys are fucking way crazier than I am. Like, what the fuck, you know? But the longer I was around, I was like, okay, you know, but that helps me have empathy for my dad because he didn't even understand that he had the disease of addiction, you know? And so a lot of the things that he did and said and acted, he's just going by impulse and like trying to do the best that he can, you know? But
so how was that like your childhood? Was you like back and forth with your parents?
Back and forth, yeah. You know, majority with my mom, but and she worked, you know, waitress, different odds and ends. My dad was a carpenter. But, you know, I mean, usually when I was at my dad's house, like he was partying, you know, like he would like get me something to keep me busy and then be hanging out with the boys, you know what I mean? So like he didn't really know how to like relate with kids, I don't think, too much, you know, he's going through his own stuff. And, you know, but I always loved my dad. I always wanted to make him proud. You know, it's kind of a crazy story, but yeah, and then I guess I'd probably start with like, because I live with my mom most of the time, and great mom, but I had to be the man of the house at a very young age. You know, she was very young, and just kind of dealt with different emotional stuff, like a lot of stress and things, and so like, I have this, even today, I have this weird canning ability. Like my life could be falling apart. I'd be like, it's going to be all right. We're going to, you know, it's like, it's a blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah.
It's like almost too laid back in some ways, but some things you do need to worry about. But yeah, I had to be the man of the house, you know, I had to like consult her a lot in certain things. And like now going through step work, like with my relationships with women and stuff, you know, like my head exploded. My sponsor was like, you know, you tend to pick women that are, you know, emotionally almost immature or like they need somebody.
Codependent.
Right? Kind of codependent. Like they need somebody. And you like to be that hero. And I'm like, and then he said, like, just kind of like your relationship with your mom. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. Yeah.
Wow.
But,
aha moment.
Yeah, an aha moment, man. But yeah, but I, you know, I'm one of those people that believe that, you know, the more I've learned about the disease, that I've always had it. You know, even when I was a kid, I can look at the different behaviors before drugs ever came into the picture, and I can see that it was just addict behavior. Whether it be like fantasy or it was just always, and getting into a lot of trouble, like doing something that made my heart race, and like I knew I should not be doing this. I was all about it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you know, like I got arrested for just stupid shit. Like I was 11 years old. I got arrested for throwing apples at cars. But you know what I mean? But it was just that adrenaline rush of like, you know, just different stuff like that. And like I always had, even in like first, second, third grade, like I always had a bunch of girlfriends, or like a girlfriend, like a new, you know, of course you're like in first, second grade. So like you're my girlfriend and we hold hands, and then it's like, all right, it was accomplished. You know what I mean? Like it's just always on to the next one. It's like those different behaviors. Once you start doing the work and you start really looking at everything, I can tell that I, you know, I always felt out of place. I always felt like there was something missing. I think that's why like serenity, you know, like we say the serenity prayer all the time. It's when you really break that down, it's like finding contentment in the moment, you know? And as an addict, it's like I feel like I'm always looking for something else, something to fulfill that void, whatever it is, you know? And then, so, you know, my dad was kind of going a little bit crazy, just partying too much. And, you know, I mean, he's a good dad, but my mom felt that I needed a good role model, like male role model in my life. And my mom's sister, my Aunt Michelle, it's my mom's older sister. She was like my grandmother in a way, because my mom's mom died when she was like 16. So she had used to live in the same neighborhood, but
do you know why she died?
Got in a car accident.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, got in a car accident. Just kind of like a freak thing. She was a really good person, apparently, like real involved with like church and just like helping people out, and she's a really good person.
So your mother was 16 when her mother passed away.
And again, the empathy thing, like understanding those things and putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, and like, you know, like, because to my mom, like family is extremely important, like almost too important. And, you know, when I look at those things, I can understand that, you know, but, yeah, so my aunt was like my grandmother in a way. She like her and my uncle, Ron, they like used to be in like a biker gang and stuff when they were younger, did like a lot of wild and crazy things. And then they changed their life. They didn't do like 12-step meetings or anything like that, but they're definitely, you know, this is a spiritual program. They just started living like a spiritual life, you know, and they had 4 kids, and I also got to say this too, like, so one of their kids died from an overdose. Like my disease runs in my family for sure. I've had 4 cousins that have overdosed and died, you know, which is crazy, because was definitely, like, when we were all teenagers, I was definitely the worst, or the most wild out of all of us, and somehow like I'm the one, and I've definitely almost died. Yeah. So it's kind of crazy, you know, to think about, but yeah, they had 4 kids and they moved out to Montana, and you know, my mom wanted to kind of, you know, like I said, family to her is like really, really important. So she wanted me to be around a positive male role model and just be around family. And it was really good for me, because it was a small town. It's literally Roundup, Montana, which it's as small as it sounds. But what was good, I couldn't get away with anything, you know? Like I was getting in a lot of trouble too before I moved out there. And then I moved out there and I still got in some trouble. I got in a fight when I first got there and stuff. But I learned really quickly, like, you know, I can't like just go do whatever. You know, somebody will see me at the gas station and then call my aunt, or, you know, whatever. So it was good. And then my aunt, she got cancer, and you know, that was rough. That was rough for everybody. She was kind of the glue that held the family together. Just an amazing woman. Like even as a kid, I remember just how much she really cared. She was very nurturing, very caring, and she understood. She had a lot of life experience, you know, so she would always talk to me.
Was this the cousin that I met down here? Was this his mother?
Jesse, no, but he also passed away.
Yeah.
But no, Ron came down here to visit. I don't think you met him, but he came down here a couple of times to visit. But yeah, no, Jesse, that's my other cousin that was like a brother. We ripped and runned a lot after I got back from Montana. But yeah, so she got cancer, and that was that was tough, man. It was tough for everybody. You know, of course, all the kids, like, they lost their mom at, you know, all in their teenage years. So, and there was 4 of them, and then, you know, like I said, we all, like, lived, if it wasn't in the same house, it was, like, really close together. And but then my uncle and my cousins and everybody else moved. I mean, my mom stayed there for like a year or 2. And she was a waitress. Like I said, she, like, worked odds and end jobs to make ends meet. So I would get out of school and she would be working. So I just had all the freedom in the world. And that's when, like, my disease really, like, you know, I started using. And when I started using and
How
drinking.
How old were you?
I remember the first time I actually, like, smoked weed and, like, actually got high and learned how to inhale it right. I was probably 12, 13, somewhere in there. And then the first time I got drunk was somewhere around the same time. But I remember being like, oh, this is where it's at, you know? And of course, you always kind of wanted to be the cool kid, or, like, you know, I always hung out with people that were older than me and stuff like that. But the way that it made me feel was great. It just took me out of the way that I was feeling, whatever shit that I was going through, you know? And, you know, as a kid, you don't really know how to analyze and understand everything that's going on in your life. And, you know, I mean, the complexity of being a human being in general is really difficult. But to have the disease on top of it and not understand, like, I I look at other kids now, and, like, my son's 11, and he's such a good kid, but, like, I think about the shit that I started doing when I was, like, 12, 13, 14, and I'm like, fuck. And I look at kids that age, and I'm like, I was doing that at that age. Like, that's how young I looked.
Yeah.
You know? But, you know, I just started getting into trouble, man. Like, I got arrested. I went to school, like, blitzed out of my mind in 9th grade, and, you know, probably smelling like weed, and you know, I got in trouble. I got arrested. And then, I just started getting into a lot of trouble, and I started using, like, whatever it was, I was down, you know, like, whatever substance it is, and I could get a hold of it, I'm going to try it, you know. I was, like, all in, and I thought it was cool, you know, and kind of, like, the mentality. So my mentality, it's kind of the rock star mentality, I guess. I don't know. But my dad, you know, even though my dad and me never really had, like, a great, strong relationship when I was a kid, you know, he's my dad, and I always loved him and admired him, and I didn't understand everything. But, you know, his mentality was like, son, you know, like, get with as many women as you can while you can. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, work hard, party harder, and get with women. You know, that was the mentality. And I tried to live that way, and I did. And, you know, until I realized, like, you know, none of that kind of stuff fulfills you. And it really is a recipe to be piece of shit, really. You know, really, you know, it's like, you don't know that stuff. You have to, you know, dude, I've had to learn everything the hard way. Even, like, coming to the rooms, like, I've known you for 12 years, but I don't have 12 years clean. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of things that I went through that I could have learned if I was just willing to, and be open-minded to really listen to somebody, you know. I think back on it, any of the times and the mistakes that I made, I'm like, oh, somebody gave me the answer. I just wasn't willing to listen, you know. I, like, you know, and I just wasn't done, you know. And I'll get to that in a little bit, but yeah, you know, in Montana, I started being able to do whatever I wanted. She wasn't really able to. I remember this. So my mom, I went to go, like, I'd steal her cigarettes and shit all the time. So I go into her car and I open the center console, and I find the pack of cigarettes. I open it up, and it's a cigarette pack full of joints, right? And I'm like, all right, if I steal some, what's she going to do? She's going to come up to me and ask me if I stole her weed? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm fucking taking some of these. So I took, like, 5 of them, and then a few
more. Just went for it.
Yeah, what are you going to do? You're going to come up to your son and be like, hey, did you happen to see my marijuana laying around? You know? I was like, this is a win-win for me, buddy. So, but then, like, a few months later, I went camping with my buddies, and when I came back, she was, like, doing the laundry, and there was, like, some empty dime bags of weed or whatever, and she confronted confronted me about it. I'm like, oh yeah. Like she was like pissed, you know what I mean? Like being a mom, and I'm like, yeah, you remember that weed that went missing? Yeah, I took that. And she was just like, fuck, you know? And then it was on, because then it was like, she knew she kind of fucked up. Like, you know, she couldn't tell me what to really do in a sense, you know. It was just like she didn't have anything to stand on then. And so, which kind of, you know, and she was going through a bunch of stuff, you know. I mean, that was her sister that had died, you know, and to go through cancer too, like that is something so hard to watch. I don't wish that on anybody.
And just navigating being a parent, you know now.
Yeah,
that, like,
exactly.
It's not as easy as it seems.
Especially, you know, raising a crazy kid like me into the teenage years.
Yeah.
Good God, poor woman.
Yeah.
You know,
hindsight.
Yeah,
right?
dude. And so we moved back to Maryland, and I was like addiction full speed. You know, I hadn't really done any hard drugs yet, but shortly after I moved back, I did. And my house was kind of like, you know, I was allowed to smoke weed after a couple years. Like it was just kind of like, that's what he does. You know, so it was kind of a given.
I do want to ask you this because you're an incredibly talented musician.
Thanks.
And so when did that already start? Did you start playing instruments or singing?
So yeah. So it's funny. I don't even like, my mom's not a musician. My dad's a drummer. Music was kind of around, but there was this acoustic guitar that my grandfather, I don't like, gave to my mom, or I don't know. It was really like a decoration. It was just, you know what I mean? I remember being a kid when I lived in Maryland. Like there's always this guitar, and I'd always try to fuck with it, but I you know, I had ideas in my head, but I couldn't articulate them at all, and I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know anybody that actually played guitar, and you know, but my Uncle Ron, my Aunt Michelle's husband, he was a musician, and he played guitar and he sang. And all my cousins were really into music too. But he showed me when I was probably 13 years old a couple of chords, just a couple of chords, and I was able to make some noise that had some type of organization to it. And I was like, okay, it clicked, you know, like it clicked. And then I would just spend hours and hours. And then I remember when I like really truly, you know, you listen to music as a kid. But like I had one of these pirated CDs that like my mom's friend or something like gave to me, but it was nothing but Soundgarden and Audio Slave. So Chris Cornell all the way, you know? And I remember just sitting in my room for hours. And of course I started getting into smoking weed, so I'd just be in my room like listening to music. But music always had kind of the same thing that drugs gave me, you know. It's a sense of release. You know, when you know, music for me is like a spiritual thing. Like, you know, not to sound like weird or whatever, but you listen to like an amazing musician, like you know, like, okay, Alicia Keys, you know, singing like This Girl's on Fire. You watch her like really do a performance of that. It is an expression of the spirit. Like it is like something really powerful.
Yeah.
And so like the best artist, I feel like that's what they're doing. So for me, I never really liked to learn too many people's, like right from the get-go, I liked to write songs, and it was easier in a way. I wasn't great at it, but it was, you know, plus to be a good musician, it takes an immense amount of like work and discipline, obsession, but also like you got to get through the shit that sucks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like to learn this song. I mean, to go play live and to play a real set, it is countless hours to be able to go out there and make it look like it's not hard.
Yeah.
You know, and to do it naturally, and to have like the songs that you put in a certain order, and the things that you say, like, dude, we would rehearse like even just things that I would say in between songs, you know?
Yeah.
That way, like, no matter how nervous you are, like, you're prepared. You can just get right through it, you know, and it'd be good. But
so you was playing at 13.
Yeah,
like, about the time you started using.
Time I started using, but before I really got heavy into it, I found that love for it. But yeah, my disease, you know, like using drugs will takes away my freedom. It puts me in handcuffs. So, you know, I probably could have, if drugs were never in the picture, I would have, you know, I would have gotten some discipline and really done something with that stuff. But I was always too preoccupied. You know, I remember doing like a couple of shows. I remember I was talking to some friends that were in this old band of mine. And we went and played this one show. And they're like, dude, people still talk about that. And I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, how fucking horrible it was. You know what I mean? Because it was like one of our first shows, but I'd forgotten all about it. And but I was so blitzed out of my mind and did not, like I would show up to band practice like 2 hours late with like a bag of Coke and 2 random girls. You know what I mean? Like the rock star before that, like there's no rock star at all. We ain't making no money. You can't even like fucking get your shit together enough to learn a song to play as a group, you know what I mean? But
I'm getting my image down.
You're right, exactly. Just such an idiot. But yeah, if drugs weren't in the picture, you know, I probably would have been able to had a clear head enough to like drive toward a certain direction, you know? I mean, I'm real big into like, you know, outside of recovery, like taking care of the way that you think. And you know, I listen to a lot of books a lot of the time, like, you know, just like the power of positive thinking, just different stuff like that. Like the way that you gear your thought life and the way that you think is extremely important. And,
for sure.
And that's kind of like the program. The program is like you're changing the way that you think. You have this whole life of a certain mentality that you need to change. And that shit takes time.
A lot of time.
Yeah. And for me, I mean, I had to go through a lot of mistakes too of like, when you think you know better, that's when you're fucked. You know what I mean? Yeah. And a lot of the time I thought that I knew better or knew some way to like get around the corner. But
yeah. So you moved back to Maryland and you started getting deep.
Yeah, dude. You know, I was obsessed with using. I was obsessed with drugs. Started getting into coke, started getting into pills. That was, you know, the big pill epidemic at that time. So it was so easy. And I didn't really understand what I was taking, you know, but I got into doing those. Those were fun. And then I remember like taking those like during the weekend. And then like I started doing that every weekend. And I always smoked weed all the time. But then I remember being like in high school. And then by the time Tuesday, Wednesday come around, I'm sick as fuck every week, you know? And I didn't understand that I'm dope sick, you know? I had a friend that was like, dude, you're probably from doing those pills. And then I remember like taking a pill on Wednesday and I felt great. And I was like, oh shit. And it was game over, you know, like, and then it was so expensive to hold up that habit. I remember I didn't have enough money to get some oxys and like I knew somebody that did heroin and I never would have done heroin before, but I was sick and I was like, it's like the same thing, right? He's like, yeah, what you spend $100 on, I can get twice as much as that for $10. You know what I mean? I'm like, that sounds like a great deal. So and then like, you know, my life of high school, and it was weird because I like had this certain image in high school, but like a lot of the times on Saturdays, I ended up being in Southeast DC smoking crack and shooting dope, you know? And then like I had like my skater friends in high school that just like smoked weed and stuff, you know? And it was like this double life. It was really weird. Like I don't think anybody really knew the extent of what I was doing except for my cousin Jesse. I remember when I first started doing heroin, like my cousin Jesse, he was like, dude, what the fuck? You know, we've had a lot of family members die and stuff, even back then. And he's like, fuck that shit. I remember him getting so mad at me and he's like peeled out. And, you know, come to find out like that's what made him lose his life was doing heroin. It's crazy, you know. But yeah, me and him started like partying together. I remember, I always share this because I remember we were going to go to a snowboarding trip, right? And, so we got in the car, we stopped by the city, of course, and like grabbed some, you know, because we lived in like southern Maryland. It's like country. You have to drive up to the city to get, you know, drugs. So we went up there, got some drugs, and then we went out to, I think it was West Virginia or like western Maryland to the mountains and go snowboarding. We got the hotel. We stayed up all night smoking crack and shooting dope. We got up the next morning with no more crack, no more dope. We looked at the mountain. We looked at each other, and then we got in the car and went back to the city.
Snowboarding doesn't sound so fun now without drugs.
Exactly. But I think about that shit, and that just reminds me that, you know, drugs, man, it puts me in handcuffs, and there's no freedom in it, and I can't live life. You know, I remember when I first started coming to get clean, and I thought, like, what does life even look like? How can you even have fun? You know, well, the opposite of fun is doing that shit. Like waking up the next morning and not even be able to experience going snowboarding because you're a fucking drug addict. You know, so now I get to like live life, you know, and anything I have good in life is from recovery.
Yeah.
Anything, you know, and I didn't, and like to fast forward a little bit, you know, I knew I was an addict. It was pretty apparent. But I wasn't quite, I didn't understand the disease, and I wasn't quite ready to make a change. But I was in a lot of pain. I was definitely lost, and I didn't understand life at that point. It was pretty grim. But I remember I like called my mom. I was on a run. I called her, basically crying, like, dude, I'm just tired of living like this. And she came and picked me up. I was probably 18. And
a baby.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, you know, when you're that age, you think you're grown, dude.
You do.
You're not. You're a fucking baby.
Yeah.
And I remember just, you know, calling her crying. She came and pick me up, and she had to like watch me all night because I'm like nodding out in my cereal. She just make sure that I was like gonna breathe and make it through the night. And you know, the next morning though, my mentality was completely different. I'm like, oh no, it's all good. Life's fine. And but she had called some people and somehow got the number of this guy who he worked at a church, but he was a member. And so I went to him and kind of told him what was going on, and he kind of shared his story with me. And he could tell in my eyes I wasn't ready. He can tell in my eyes that, like, you know, I'll plant the seed, and here's a meeting schedule if you want it, but, you know, we'll see what you do. And I remember, it's so weird. His name was Charlie. It's like, I don't know why I remember this, but it's just funny. His name was Charlie Brown, and like back then it was real. It was real. Well, Charlie Brown, that's funny too. But you know, that's what we called our heroin because it was, you know, it was actual heroin back then. It was brown. Like, yeah, let's go get some Charlie Brown. And then the guy, that first person I talked to about recovery, his name was Charlie Brown. So funny. But, you know, he told me where a meeting was. I went to that meeting. I was super nervous. I don't remember what was said. I remember that the room, the main thing I remember is to get into the room. It was like in the back of this church, and it was really confusing to figure out how the fuck to get there. And some lady, I remember her seeing me like just lost and confused. She's like, "You looking for the meeting?" I'm like, "Yeah." And but I do remember that the people, it's like the atmosphere of recovery, and that these people had some time. Some of them didn't have time. Some of them had a lot of time. But I could tell that they understood. There was just, you know, I remember I stole some stuff like from my grandmother, and it was, I love my grandmother. But I stole some stuff from her, and it was kind of like, you know, she's like, "Why the fuck did you do that?" And I'm like, I don't really know. You know, like, I love you, but like I gotta get high. I don't know. I didn't have an answer. I remember that. And then I remember going to the meeting and people talking about kind of that there was some type of answer, and I wasn't really ready yet. But it planted the seed, and I used for like another year. And, you know, it's kind of crazy. Nothing really ever like super bad happened to me using. But it's always the emotional and spiritual crushing, like just being completely broken. That's what kills me more than financially or, you know, I never really went to prison or anything, thank God, you know. Which, by the way, like, I like sponsored guys here in Florida, and like the shit that they have 17 felonies for. I'm like, dude, how the fuck? Like, I used to do that every Tuesday. You know what I mean? Like, you got how many felonies? Like, I never got a felony. Thank God. I should. But yeah, so But I called my mom. I'm like, I think I need to go to rehab. She's like, yeah, it's probably a good idea. Mm-hmm. And I was like, all I need you to buy me a plane ticket, because I just Googled a rehab, and somehow Lakeview is like the first thing that popped up in Jacksonville. I'm like, sounds good.
Yeah.
And I called them, and with the job that I had at the time, I actually had some insurance, surprisingly. That's like an act of God. And they're like, yeah, we can take you. And that's how I ended up down here. And my insurance ran out within 10 days, but I got to detox. And I needed to get into a halfway house. So I got into a halfway house. And then that was in 2009. And it was right before Thanksgiving. And right before I left to come down to Florida to go to rehab, I remember copping one more time from my cousin who's passed away, and my other friend Josh, who spent years in prison. He's doing good today, but I remember being like, dude, I'm going to rehab, and they're just laughing at my face. You know what I mean?
Straight up laughing.
Yeah, they're just like, okay, whatever.
Loser.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Loser. Yeah, exactly. And dude, it's crazy. Like, all my friends that I grew up with that partied like that, dude, none of them doing shit with their life, or they're dead. And
or in prison.
That's what I mean by recovery has given me everything. I never thought that I could live a life without getting high. I thought that I was going to use until I died. This is it for me, And then, because using actually works when it comes to treating the disease for a little while.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then it stops working, and then you're, it's like weed, you recover at the end of the road, And so I came down here, I went to rehab, and then I had to go back home for Thanksgiving, and I relapsed. I conned my dad out. I'm like, yeah, my friend needs some pain pills, whatever we do. Can't remember exactly what I said, but I ended up relapsing, but I remember I made it 14 days, and for me. So I'll hear newcomers talk, oh, I got 7 days. I'm like, bro, that is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I remember making it it was such a weird feeling, because it was like, fuck, I relapsed. But it was so I felt like I wasted my time. But I was like, dude, I made it fucking 14 days. It was such a big deal.
Yeah.
I could not make it through a day without using something, something, something,
I always described it where people understand is I would be like, just imagine sitting in front of a judge and they'd be like 30 days, and you'd be like, God damn, that's a long time. And people always get that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, 14 days is for a using addict,
dude,
in that
it's
state,
a lifetime. That's a lot of miracles. And so it was a process, though. I turned to that 30, 60, 90-day shuffle. But like I said, the mentality, the only thing about recovery, the only thing you got to change is everything. So it's a lot of shit to fucking work out. And, and I had to go through what I had to go through. And so then I got to the point where I was still kind of doing the shuffle. I was dating this girl, and I got her pregnant. And, that's where it became not about me. And I had the responsibility of another human being. And that changed the way that I thought about everything. It made me take life a lot more serious, because I didn't really like myself anyway. So, using and self-pain is whatever. But then when you have somebody else's life in your hands, it changes. So I found out that I was going to have a kid. And so I got serious. I quit playing games. Because I had to work out the kinks too, because, I had that thought process of dude, I just want to quit shooting dope. You know what I mean? I was still I was fucking 19, 20 years old. I'd never even been able to drink legally in a bar yet, So I just wanted to get this dope shit out of the way so I can go out and have a couple of beers, get my money right, get my place, get my car, get the job, get the girl, and then go out and have a couple beers with the boys. And so I kept trying to do that, and I kept failing at it. Because I wasn't an alcoholic, I'm like, dude, but the problem is the dope was always at the end of the bottle. You know what I mean? I could go but even then, I say that, but I remember there was this pool hall across from my apartment, and they wouldn't card us even when I lived in Florida. So I'd go over there and drink And then I would like be walking back to my apartment, throwing up in the middle of University Boulevard.
UBC.
Yep, exactly. Yep, that's right. Yeah, man. Because that's when I met you around that time, but I was still that 30, 60 day shuffle.
Yeah. But you were around.
I was around. Meetings. I was making meetings.
Weren't staying clean.
I wasn't staying clean
very long.
I was trying, kinda. You know, I was trying for a few weeks, and then it's like that mentality. And so yeah, I got this girl pregnant, and I'm like, okay, fuck. So June 23rd, 2011, I decided to stay for a while, and I remember after I had a year. I was going to a lot of meetings. I was staying clean. I was getting past that uncomfortable stage a little bit. And it takes time, but I was young. I didn't know who I was. I remember sharing in a meeting when I had like a year, and this lady with a lot of time, I don't even remember her name, or if she was from out of town or what, but she was like, you need to, because I kind of shared of like, I got this girl pregnant and it's about my family, and now I'm clean and I'm living a good life. And she's like, you need to take a fucking look at that. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you got to do this shit for yourself. And I was like, fuck you, bitch, Yeah. but I never forgot it. And it stuck in the back of my head. I'm like, man, why am I really doing this, And now doing step work, looking back on this, like I was, fucked up from my childhood in the way that I was brought up. And I was, this girl that I was with, before I found out she was pregnant, I was trying to break up with her. I found out she was pregnant. I'm like, all right, I guess we're going to be together forever now, Yeah. Like no matter what.
Yeah.
And the disease, like there's certain things, like it's cool that you can work the principles in all areas of your life. And I've learned a lot of this stuff now. At the time, you don't know, but, like control, I want my life to be a certain way. So it's like, I got clean. I'm like, all right, we're going to get married. Like I worked my way up at my job. I bought a house. We had another kid. We got 2 dogs. We had a fucking fence, the whole deal. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so at the time too, now looking back on it, I didn't know who I was, but I knew that like my family was the most important thing to me. But I did, and I, after having some years, man, 4 or 5 years, my family became more important. It always kind of was more important than my recovery, like I use recovery to get what I want. It's always about me and what I want and how I want it and the control factor. And, recovery, is good. Like I learned how to live a spiritual life. I learned a lot of lessons. I grew up. I became an adult. There's a lot of good things that I learned from that time. But then, my wife walked up to me one day and was like, we're separated now, we had some issues, but, and probably a lot of them was, I became like a dry drunk, like they say, I really wasn't working that big of a program. She also had her shit, which we're great friends now. But it took a long time, dude. Jesus. And literally it had me putting the program to use is the only reason these miracles happen, that me and her are able to chill and talk like me and you are now. And like the miracles happen. But dude, that shit, my whole world flipped upside down, because that is what my life was about, was my family, And so when that happened, a lot of things happened, and I was having this conversation with the newcomer not too long ago. I was on the phone, and I kind of came up with this analogy, because it really scares me when I see guys that are in here and then they go out and use, but they don't use like hard. Mm-hmm. They could just go have a little slip. Yeah. A little slip.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're like, oh, I'm back. And I'm like, and there's a lot of people that have had that and have had decades clean time after that, but it scares me, because my experience was, I kind of look like NA is the beach. This is this analogy that made sense in my head. It's safe, whatever, it's sunny, and going out in the ocean, you go swimming. When you go to use, you can go out there. You go out there a little bit. It's not too bad. You can always come back. You got a little bit further though, and you got that current that'll start pulling you out. You start getting a little scared, but then you can come back.
Yeah.
And I kind of used recovery, and I used using to get what I wanted and how I wanted to feel, and trying to just find the answer. But like I said, because using does work for a little while. Like when my life was extremely painful when I was going through a divorce and my life completely fucking fell apart. I went and dude, it was just the most painful thing I've ever been through. And I went out in of January 2017 and I was just so fucked up about it. I was going to meetings and I was sharing, but I was just in so much pain, and I didn't understand. I did not understand how my higher power would allow this to happen. Mm-hmm. And I was devastated. And so I went out and I got like a 12-pack of beer. I got a hotel room and I got shit-faced. And then I was like, that's not the answer.
All by yourself?
All by myself, like a true addict.
And how did you feel? Do you remember how you felt?
I remember getting drunk and I felt relief. But then I woke up the next day and I felt even worse. Shame, broken. I let go all that clean time. I didn't really know how I felt. There's a lot of feelings, you know. I knew that, and I only used that one time, and then I stayed clean for a little while after that. I there's more to the story, but you know, like I came back and I remember like talking to my sponsor, which I'm pretty sure we have the same sponsor still. Yeah. So
how much time did you have?
2011 to 2017, so 5.5, 6 years, somewhere in there.
Wow.
Yeah. And you know, because at that point, man, like if I did the right thing, all good things happened.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you know, like my life was falling apart, and I was just so angry.
Yeah.
I was full of anger and resentment, angry at her, angry at God, not understanding like why is this happening, right? And the way that my sponsor and I didn't have the capacity to understand what he was trying to tell me, but he said, "What do you want?" I said, "Well, I want it to work out." He said, "Well, we don't know what God is doing, so let's work toward what you want, but you need to be able to, you know, surrender and accept whatever your higher power is doing." I didn't understand that. I just, that shit flew right over my head.
Yeah, he has such foresight, dude, that it's like,
I call him Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it'd be like, wax on, wax off, and you have no idea why the fuck you're doing this. And you're like, what the fuck? This is so stupid. And then like later on, you're like, yeah, fuck you.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
So yeah, I call him Mr. Miyagi. And yeah, so he like told me all that shit. I didn't understand it at all. It went right over my head, but I did like that I was allowed to try to pursue her and make it work out, because we were still living together. We were just separated. And so I'd leave her like little love notes around. He basically was like, that way, no matter the way, whatever happens, you'll be able to know that you did what you could. So I'd like leave her little love notes around and do these little things, and it just wasn't working. She was like, I'm out. And then it finally, like, it exploded, because I would be working out of town, and I'd come home on the weekends, and she would just leave and do it. It was just a fucking toxic situation. It was really fucking horrible. And then we, you know, finally we just got in this, I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And she left. And then my control, it didn't work out the way that I wanted it to. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going back out. You know, I'm going to the bar. And I did all that, and, you know, went to the bar, and that was, you know, and I also had this idea of like, well, maybe I was just this fucked up, you know, strung out kid, lost, you know, because the weird thing is I've met people that have, you know, had this horrible problem with like crack, and then now they're able to just be a normal adult and have some beers, and they don't smoke weed, they don't do nothing, you know, whatever. I've like met those people. I'm like, I want to be you. You know what I mean? But it doesn't work like that way for me. I've tried. And so, you know, it worked for a little while, like just drinking, but then I ended up actually, and this is like a 6-month period, I ended up, you know, getting to the point where I ended up doing a little bit of coke and doing a little bit of heroin. And I was, you know, like 2 or 3 times. And I'm like, what the fuck? No. We're not doing this.
And at this time, you have kids.
And I have kids, dude. You know, because at the time, like, my kids never, I was clean before they were even born. And, you know, I mean, I never used around them or anything like that, thank God. But Dude, it's crazy. I mean, so, you know, that analogy of like that beach thing and going out in the water. This last time that I used, you know, I have 18 months almost right now. And, dude, it was fucking terrifying. Like, it was
the swim back.
Dude, I was out there and I wanted to come back, but I fucking could not get to the shore. I just kept swimming and swimming and swimming. It was the most terrifying fucking thing I've ever been through. I used harder, all those yets. I woke up in the hospital 3 different times from overdosing, not knowing how the fuck I got there. Spiraled so far out of control, and not one part of it was fun. It was not fun. It was terrifying, you know, like, and in some ways, you know, like I remember, and I'm grateful for all that. But it took me to the point where I almost died for me to be like, I'm done playing games with my foot in the fucking water. I'm fucking done. You know, I mean, that's why I do music and I do all these different things now. Like, people are like, dude, what the fuck happened to you? And it's like, I almost fucking died. I was on my deathbed and I was like, dude, if this is it, I have a lot of regrets. I have a lot of things that I didn't do. Our sponsor says, like, you know, I'm an addict and I'm grateful. I'm so grateful to be clean. Because they say a grateful addict will never use. I remember hearing that shit. I'm like, shut the fuck. You know, because I'm like a white knuckling addict in the room, just like, get the fuck out of here. You're really that grateful? Well, like, now I understand that. It like, and then like in the, meditation this morning, like, it is a blessing to have this disease and who have found recovery. I would not want my life to be any other way, because, I know normal people, right? Everybody could use the 12 steps, but I know normal people that go through life fucking miserable. Most people, honestly, for being real, like, you look at society today, most people are fucking miserable. And I definitely was one of them. But to look, and I have over a year, every single day, made a gratitude list. 5 things. Religiously, every day, I do that because I needed to change the way that I thought. And once that clicked, I was like, okay, we're going to do this. My perspective needs to change, because you can wake up in the morning and be like, ah, fuck, I got to go to this goddamn job, got these responsibilities. Or you can wake up and be like, dude, I'm alive. Maybe you have a lot of stressful shit going on, and I do. But I'm grateful to be able to just be fucking breathing and not be in handcuffs. Like, not even like physical handcuffs, but like just stuck to the disease, man. Like, I remember like going to a methadone clinic and just being like, maybe I need some type of solution, And then I ended up, and I guess we can like back up a little bit, but I like came back in 2018. I just never really healed from everything. I, got in this other relationship. Like, I sold my house, went through the divorce, moved in with this other girl that was in recovery. And it was just, it was great at first. And then, like, we both ended up going back out together, like, during the pandemic. And it was just fucking crazy.
Was that the time, I know you had got some time cleaning that, but was that the time that, like, I seen you before you started coming back to the rooms? I seen you in front of me. Do you remember that?
I remember that. But that was like, I don't remember when that was exactly in this timeline, but I do remember that specifically because you seen me, or I think you called me or something.
I did. I was like, I was looking behind you, and I was like, this motherfucker better pick up the phone.
Did I answer?
You did.
Okay. And I think that's what you said. You're like, I'm right behind you.
I'm right behind you.
Yeah. Let's see if you fucking hit that fuck you button. You know what I mean?
Pull up next to you, hey, asshole.
Yeah. But yeah, I do that shit to guys that are out there now, that I see come in, and they'll be out there, and like, dude. So also during that time that I had that 5-6 years, I could not relate to the newcomer anymore. I got so distanced from the actual pain of using. I like built this life. I got away from meetings. I had that disease, man. Like when you're just not spiritually fit. Like, I didn't understand what that feeling even was. Like, I just didn't know. Like, now when I start feeling a little funky, I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what it is. Yeah. I need to treat my disease. Like, it is a disease. If I don't treat it, I go fucking mentally crazy. If I'm treating it, I'm a fucking great human being, But if I'm not, dude, get the fuck out of my way.
Yeah.
You don't want to be anywhere around me.
Yeah.
And, and the thing, it affects your thinking to where I thought every time that I used or made these decisions made perfect sense. There's a couple of times that I was just in massive amount of pain and I just didn't give a fuck. There's that too. And, I just didn't understand that if I would have just held on and like reached out to guys that had been through divorces or been through this type of shit. And, and people were sharing with me certain things, but I just couldn't grasp it. I could not grasp. I had to go. It just took what it took, Yeah, I don't have as much time as I used to have or anything like that, but I'm like free, like I'm really doing this thing. I really understand it. A lot of the, luckily I do have all that experience from all those years. So like when I came back, and it was rough, dude. I called Donald and I'm like, dude, here's what's been going on. He's like, I know. I'm not a fucking idiot, And I'm like, but I'm scared, man. Like, I don't have money to go to like detox or nothing. Like I'm fucking so this is the last, like the very end of my using. I remember I'd gotten out of that relationship that I was in because I knew, like, I don't want to live this life. This shit is crazy. She used even harder than I did. So, like, I remember she was all, like, whacked out of her mind. And I came home from work. And I'm like, dude, look at yourself. Get your shit together. Yeah. She's like, look at you, motherfucker. And I'm like, touche. Goddamn. You got a good point there. And, and so I was like, I had to get the only thing you had to change is everything. So I had to change. I had to get out of that relationship. It wasn't healthy at all, and luckily I don't know what happened to her. I think she went to like treatment and stuff. I hope she's doing good, but I just had to like drop all contact and leave that relationship. And, I got my own place, but I was still using for like a month. And just to not be dope sick, like I was like trying to figure out a way, and I just had to do it. I kept trying to buy some and like work my way down and all that kind of shit. No, I just had to like. So I remember calling Donald, and I was like, "Dude, there's a situation." He's like, "All right, well, this is gonna suck." Or I told him, "I'm like, this is gonna suck." He's like, "Good, it needs to suck." So I was like, "All right." So I woke up. I had like. I had money. It's not like I didn't have money. I still to this day know where to go get whatever I want, whenever I want, and as much as I want. But I like had a lot of dope and I dumped it all down the sink, said a prayer, and I did not sleep for fucking 10 days. I couldn't eat. I remember like day 6, I called him, my sponsor, and I'm like, dude, I think we're turning a corner here. Like I'm able to eat some food. Like I had like a Popeyes chicken sandwich. I ate like half of it, and he's like, good man, awesome, know. And then I get up off the phone, and then I'm driving back home, and then I sneeze. Fucking I threw up all over my steering wheel, all over myself, and I'm like, nope, we're not there yet. So, yeah, dude, it sucked. I mean, when I say I didn't sleep for 10 days, I mean, like, not for 1 second did I sleep. And right before that, I want to say this, and it's really something that I'm never going to forget, but I had my kids, and I never, used in front of them or anything like that, but I was using, and just so I could function, and I had them, and I was at my house, and I was getting real sick, like almost like dope sick, but I like the shit that I was doing, like was just making me sick, and this dirty shit, and I don't know if like my kidneys were failing, but it was like I couldn't sleep, I was sweating and all this stuff, and I remember throwing up. When I say throwing, I mean I'm like throwing up like blood, I was fucked up. And it was like 3:00 in the morning. My youngest is in my bed. My oldest is upstairs. And then I'm like, well, what am I dope sick? Because I was like shoving the shit up my nose and not using needles. My nose was all fucked up. So like I tried to do more, just started throwing up even more. And then I had this feeling from like the bottom of my feet slowly creep up all the way up to the top of my head. And it felt like 1,000 icicles. I don't know what the fuck it was. I don't know if I was like having kidney. I don't know what it was. It was fucked up. It scared the shit out of me. I thought I was literally about to die. And I started crying. I started praying. One of those foxhole prayers. And it kind of went away. It was very intense. It kind of went away, and then I was able to go to sleep, and then, I was able to kind of get through the next day, and then I dropped my kids off, and then the day after that's when I dumped all the shit out and called my sponsor, like in that prayer, in that moment, I was like, look, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die. But like, for the love of God, please don't let my kids find me. There's nobody else in this house, And that was a moment, and I was like, all right, I'm fucking, I don't give a shit what it takes. So even during those 10 days, like, that's all I kept thinking about, was like my kids, like they need a dad, and I would just, even as much as I wanted to use or whatever, and I was just done, dude. It's not that I wanted to use or anything. It's just, sometimes you use to get rid of that pain of that physical addiction, but I was like, nah, I'm fucking done with this shit, and I'd go to meetings every day. And that, because I've been around for so long, there's that hard part of like worrying about what people think about you, from like relapsing and all that kind of shit all the time. I was in so much pain, I didn't give a fuck anymore. Like, that was the furthest thing from my mind. I don't give a fuck if you like me or not. Go fuck yourself. Yeah. If you want to hug me, awesome. I need to do this, and nobody gave a fuck. Everybody loves you. When I see somebody that was out, like, dude, I just want to make sure that you're okay.
Yeah, thrilled to see you.
Yes, genuinely. And I just started doing the deal, man. And then, like, music's also been a huge, part of it, man. Like, I started to find some purpose, not only in like helping other people, but music's therapy. I'm able to like express myself through that, and it gives me something cool to look forward to. But then I was able to like use, I just started reading different books too, and like one of them is just align your gifts with some type of purpose. And so, I try to gear like my music in that purpose. Like the first song was like Unashamed, and it's about coming back from a relapse. And if you listen to it and look at the lyric video, you can see all the lyrics, and if you're in the rooms, you're like, oh yeah, I get it. And then I did Gone Too Soon after that, because for mental health and addiction, and it, I have a whole video or whatever of like kind of the writing process of it and the story behind that song, but it ended up being, honoring our heroes that have like lost their life, like musical heroes that have like lost their life from suicide, like mental health or overdose. And then also like my family members and his, everybody around this project has all lost somebody. Like this disease messes with everybody. And then, kind of at the end, it just did it for awareness, just being able to like, I don't have any aspirations of being like fucking known or anything or any ego part of it. It's just something that like I just I'm gonna do it. If nobody listens, I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? No. I just love the creating process, and it's therapeutic for me, and helps me, man. Like just to be able to do that, and it's cool. It's something cool to look forward to. And then, my relationship with my ex-wife. That's another miracle, man. Like I came back in so much pain because at the time I was also going back for more custody. It was a shit show. It was, I was angry and bitter. I couldn't forgive, but from being in that much pain, and coming back, like not only did I surrender to like the program and a higher power, I surrendered everything. I quit trying to fight and manipulate things to go the way that I wanted them to go. Whatever it is and whatever way it goes, it's fine. I'm just happy to fucking be alive at this point, and genuinely. And it's funny, I learned exactly what people were trying to teach me is like surrender and acceptance, the way that life is, to look to a higher power and have faith in that whatever happens is going to be all right, those first 3 steps, and really applying those in other areas. And so, it took a while. I remember like she'd call me up and be like, fuck you, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, have a nice day, and I had to do that for a long time, and I would like genuinely just pray for her and just, just gave up just trying to, I didn't, I like settled outside of court. She's like, we're going to have to pay my court cost fees. I'm like, fine, whatever. We'll keep it all the same. I'm just done fighting. I'm done with all this shit. I just want to be, we just need some peace and serenity and see what God does. It's funny because I don't know if that's the instance in everybody's situation, but for me, I feel like that's the way that God was trying to teach me a certain lesson. Some people do need to go fight for things or whatever, but it was like letting go and letting, like, my will and God's will, right? Letting go of control of trying to make something happen the way that I think it should happen, and the things that I'm not in control of, which is different people and places, anything outside of me, and letting them kind of flow the way they're going to flow. And it's crazy once you do that and you're really like living a spiritual life and how things happen. Not too long ago, I got to be at a baseball practice with, and like our families hated each other, like going through all the divorce stuff. It was me and now my mom lives with me. I'm getting to take care of her, which is great. And we were at my son's baseball practice, and it was like me, my mom, my ex-wife, and her parents, and all like not putting up a face, not, and some shit happened between me and her dad and stuff. Like, I just let it go. And he'd be like, go fuck yourself. And I'm like, okay, And then, like, now we're, and then we just had my youngest son's birthday party, and we were able to do the party together, which was huge, and yeah, it's just miracles happening, Yeah. I think we're going to go to fucking Universal together. Like, me and my ex-wife and my kids, like, just literally as friends. We're great friends,
Yeah.
And probably better friends than anything else, and so it's cool, dude. Recovery, anything like I said, have good in my life is from recovery, and the blessings, like I would not trade having this disease, even though I went through an immense amount of pain and a lot of struggle. But because of this program and just living a spiritual life, and it made me search for answers. And then when I found them, the gratitude that I have in this life, like I said, normal people, go to a job that they fucking hate and whatever, like I just know so many people. I'm like, dude, you could use the 12 steps. Yeah. You might not be a drug addict, but you are fucking crazy, and you need some type of spiritual life. And like, I found that. And so, I'm currently going through a lot of different stuff, but I'm able to have serenity in the moment and be grateful for it, and just know that I can only control what's in today.
You can navigate maturely now.
Yes. Yeah. I've learned a lot of fucking lessons. It's like, dude, everyone's like trying to explain it to me, and like, hey, bro, here's the door. Just fucking walk through it. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna run through the goddamn wall because I can figure this shit out on my own. It's funny that I've had to be like that, but now I'm like, I remember what happened last time when I tried to figure this shit out on my own.
Yeah.
I'm good. Yeah. So yeah, it's not, and I don't really think about like time or whatever as far as in recovery. It's quality, I mean, to our sponsor, Clean Time is very important, and I do think it is very important. But dude, it's like our literature talks about and stuff, and I understand it. It's like, dude, you can have 20 years, but you see people with 20 years that are like haven't really fully worked out the spiritual stuff, and they're just fucking crazy
or digressed.
Yeah, actually, exactly. So
it's quality. You said it. It's quality over quantity for sure. Quantity is great. Quality is what's most important. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, man, you have given me an amazing podcast for everybody to enjoy. Thanks, a fucking lasagna of a podcast. I'm serious. This was awesome.
Cool.
I had to stop myself from tearing up a couple of times, actually, because I think about it with like having a daughter now and losing my parents at a very early age is like my biggest fear, for my daughter. So man, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience, strength, and hope. I really appreciate it. Man. Awesome, buddy.
My pleasure.
Hey, and real quick for those that are listening, if I will put a link to Brandon's music on there, his band. It is actually very incredible music. It's really good. You're very, very talented, man.
Appreciate
I'm surprised. I was like, when I was watching you before, I was like, this guy's gonna fucking make it big. Like, I'm saving your shit on Spotify.
Yeah. Well, it's not that easy, man. It's like, it's like, I remember I used to think like, all right, like I wrote an amazing song. We fucking made it, boys. Yeah. Like we're gonna be millionaires, you know. And it's like, doesn't work like that. Like that's the starting point, you know what I mean? It takes a lot of work, and but like I said, man, it's also the process of that. Just the process of that is what brings the joy. Yeah, you know,
like this.
Yeah, exactly. Like who knows what's gonna happen with this?
Yeah, I don't really care. I love doing this.
Yeah, and it gives you. You have to have that. I feel like, man, that's truly living life to the fullest. Mm-hmm. You know, having this, seeing where it goes, getting to talk to people. You know, experiencing life. The rich, the good stuff, you know?
Yeah. So find your passion and hobby, kiddos.
Yep, that's right.
But once again, man, thank you so much. This was absolutely a pleasure. Cool. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure, man.
Yes, sir.